One of the main themes that's going to develop today in the conversation, and it is intended to be somewhat of a conversation, is that there are a lot of unleveraged assets that organizations in here have. And one of the things that we've seen is that a lot of times charities don't see what's going on already inside the organization. And as a result of that, they're unleveraged assets. So one can look at the concept of volunteers, for example, and a lot of people around the room who consult with nonprofits, they confirm this, that when I talk to nonprofits, and I'm a lawyer, and typically this is not necessarily a conversation I would get into, when I talk about, well, how many volunteers do you have? Or do you have a volunteer division? And what do you think the answer is to that question? Anybody know? Thomas? Andrew? They don't even use volunteers. They don't even have a strategy to develop a program of volunteers. So what happens to people like myself who've been in this nonprofit sector for so many years, like Jonathan Jaffrey, our speaker, Barry Siegel, who should be around, and Bob McKim, is that we begin to wonder, why are they missing out on these opportunities? Because volunteers are free. And people say, well, we can't do what we want to do because we don't have the money to do it. Well, if you don't avail yourself of a free asset, then I'm not sure that we can feel sorry for you. Okay, so that's going to be part of this conversation. What are you missing that's literally right in front of you? And you know, there's organizations like Best Buddies, for example, and a couple of the staff members are here, Amber Coughlin, and they do a great job in terms of their program for utilizing volunteer staff. So it's these types of things that become really important, because especially in the times that we have today, which are very turbulent, things are shifting, so you've got to be alert to what's going on. And that's one reason why I wanted Adlai to speak, because I've had the pleasure of having a couple of conversations with him. And to me, and I'm not just saying this because I am known to overstate a lot of things, he is one of the smartest guys that I know in terms of thinking about the nonprofit sector. Just talking about thinking. Not only does he think about it, but he actually works in the nonprofit sector. He ran Chrysalis for 7 years, former investment banker. And so the idea is that we can change the way we think through education, and this is what the seminar is about. And if you change the way you think, then actions follow the thinking. So you have to change your thinking, and then your actions will follow.
Hi, I'm Barry Siegel. I'm a consultant in the nonprofit sector. I work particularly with strategic planning, board development, and fund development. And Kent said something is a good point about leveraging. If you don't have a board that really can help you with this, then you're missing the most important asset you have. And many agencies are really good at providing services, but haven't figured out how to use a board of directors properly. And that's one of the things I do. And just recently, in the last couple of weeks, I've become associated with the law firm, and now I'm helping with organizational development. So many of you who would like to talk to me afterwards about their own organizational needs, I'd be happy to do that.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Jaffrey. I run a company called Springbank Social Capital Advisors, and everything we do is around social enterprise, so I'm really interested to hear what Adlai has to say this morning. We consult in the area of social enterprise and help nonprofits find funding to get their social enterprises up and running. Glad to see so many people in the room today interested in this topic, and very interested to hear what Adlai is going to share with us today.
Great, thank you. See what's in the room, who's in the room. And not only from the standpoint of, oh, I really want to know that person, to the standpoint of, you know, really there's a lot of interesting, good things that are happening here. There's a lot of different people. And ultimately, the theme of some of what Adlai is talking about relates back to how people work together. And we're talking about organizations now. Then maybe there's more thoughts about who in the room can work together. So that's a really important thing. You saw people from the housing world and the legal world, just people helping with disabilities, mental health, art education, and culture, and animals. We've got bankers here today, CPAs, lawyers again, consultants, and philanthropic advisors. So this room is pretty well represented in terms of the overall community that's serving the nonprofits. We're going to take a few minutes just to kind of relax for a second, and then we're actually going to get underway here. So.
I want to thank Kent. There's a couple of people in the room I've had the pleasure of working with during my career. There aren't a whole lot of people that I recommend out there. There are a couple in the room. Kathy was my banker at Chrysalis and just did a phenomenal job for her, Kathy Fergan. Jonathan Jaffrey, who's a brilliant consultant and understands the world of business and nonprofit working together, is here. And I have to apologize to him because he also has to hear me speak again this afternoon to a YPO group. So I'm really going to bore him today. Maxine Johnston in the back is a phenomenal, not headhunter, talent management, but I recommend highly. And Union Rescue Mission is so close to my heart. As a good Jew, I tend to support highly Catholic and Christian organizations, not Catholic. So it is every time I go down and visit Andy there, I end up walking out writing a check. So I warn you of going over there. So I'm always writing a check. Another one? So I just want to say one thing that I heard in this room, and then I'll get to a couple of other things I wanted to say. But what I want to say is I heard people use terms differently. They use the term volunteer, and they use the term board member. And that drives me crazy. Because what happens is we love our volunteers, and we're always pissed at our board members. Our board members are never doing enough. They're not raising money. They're not introducing people to us. They're not doing everything they can do. But I just want to remind you, board members are volunteers. And if you rename them, and I ask people to do this, when you're having a discussion about your board, and you use the term volunteer instead of board member, it changes the way you think about them. And you start to go, our volunteers aren't doing enough. Our volunteers aren't raising enough money for us. If those darn volunteers would do more, it would be great. They're volunteers. Treat them like volunteers. So with that in the room, how many of you have been asked by volunteers at your organizations to create your own revenue stream? Stop asking us to raise money, right? Go figure out how to do your own business. So that's the concept behind social entrepreneurship. But let me give you a little more history behind the term social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. Social entrepreneurship used to be called starting a nonprofit. It's got a different name now, and I'll tell you why. In the late 1990s, there were these very young people who made $1 billion overnight in the dot-com industry. And several of them became philanthropists. And as a 22-year-old philanthropist, the only model they knew was their own model. That was all they knew. Be smart, start a business, and that's the way. Why aren't nonprofits just like us? We're geniuses. We're 22. We opened shoes.com, and now we're billionaires. So the brilliance of nonprofit is we said, well, we're entrepreneurs too. We'll be social entrepreneurs. And then they said, well, you're running nonprofits. Why aren't you running enterprises? We said, well, we're running enterprises. So we became social entrepreneurs running social enterprises. And then they started writing checks. The idea of a social enterprise is either a nonprofit or a for-profit. But I'm going to focus on nonprofits today that have figured out a way to become partially sustainable by creating a business model that produces its own revenues.